everybody, this is Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we are coming to you live from the Lionheart Institute podcast. This is our series on interviews, our interview series. And I have got one of my true heroes on the line tonight. I'm excited that he's here. I've known him for a very long time, almost 20 years. So you're going to see all this beautiful hair on the top of his head, his beautiful white pretty smile. His teeth are all nice and young still. Makes me feel like an old man, but I'm telling you, the adventure that this cat has been on has been an exciting one. He has been through a place of brokenness, also been to a place where he's restored the broken. And in that process had his own wounds and his own injuries that have occurred. And he's really building a beautiful life. Yeah. He is a great father, tremendous husband, and it's making a huge impact in the world that we live in. I'm so excited to have him. Gabriel, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, guys. I'm so glad to be with you today.
Come on, family. How you been, man?
I have been good. Besides all this COVID stuff, you know how many times I've been able to get my hair done this year? It's been because
Talk to me.
They keep shutting it down, and I'm like, I got to get this taken care of.
Well, you're looking pretty today, so I'm glad you cleaned up for the show because they just put us on lockdown again.
And got that thought last week.
It's perfect timing as you've always had, man. So tell the people a little bit. I met you, gosh, it's almost 20 years ago. I think 18 more specifically, if we were to get to the knickknacks of it. I was about your age, I would imagine, at the time. Maybe a little bit older. Maybe a little bit younger than you are now. I don't know. But you were always the highest priority on my checklist when I went to certain events and did certain things that would bring you into my world. And when I'd look at you, I knew that you were a bright star. I knew that you were something very special. I knew you were a person of huge impact. I would watch, and it was kind of funny because in the world that he was at, it was a very mixed world. It was very diverse. However, there weren't a whole lot of brothers. Right, there were some Kent brothers at the time, which Kent was kind of crossing over the bridge from from what we'll call pretend brothers. That would be me, us like chocolate brothers, to more of an urban center, right? And it wasn't the world of Kent that it is today. So there wasn't a whole lot of people that still had touch with their urban roots and kind of that understanding of blackness. So there was a lot of I would say timid might be a good way to express the culture of blackness in Kent at the time. And yet he was not timid at all. He was proud of who he was, which was remarkable. He was strong in who he was, which I found very admirable. Because a lot of cats, when they're outnumbered, become silent. Right. And I think that that's one of the most tragic things about American culture. When we say American culture, more specifically the American Republican kind of picture of the church, they silence black men to where they really lose their voice in a lot of aspects. And I've always been extremely proud of you. I don't even know if you were aware of that, G, but one of the reasons why I was so committed to investing as much as I could into his life was because he never lost who he was. He refused to give up his identity, his character, his association with our community. So he stayed strong in those roots and those elements, and I know that it was probably extremely difficult for you at times to do so in the world that you lived in. But would you give our audience, the Lionheart audience, a little bit of background on who you are, where you come from? Give some relevance to the expression of my appreciation for who you were and who you are to our audience.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having us on. 18 years, man. It's crazy.
It's a long journey, baby.
Yeah, and just so you know, like, you've been one of the key influences in my life that made a major impact, and so thank you for your investment into me. We'll get to that story in just a sec, but my story, I was born back in the 80s, and man, those were just different times, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, I have a huge family. There's 9 of us, actually 10 of us. Yeah, my parents, my mom birthed 6 and adopted 4. And so our house is always full, and I'm the 5th of the 10. And so just started with right in the middle, and mostly boys. So 8 boys, 2 girls. And so it's fun in my house, but I mean, we're kind of thrust into just chaotic life. Like,
Yes, indeed.
you got this family that just moved from Beacon in the 80s. Like, we moved in 87 from Beacon Hill, and we were broke. Like, my dad was like, we were on the verge of homelessness.
Wow.
And a dude that actually became our long-term pastor, still friends with our family and still pastoring, he found us our house out in Kent. And back in the day, Kent's like the ninth most diverse city in America now. But back in the day, like, Kent was like trailer parks and no teeth. You know
Nice.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and no melanin, right? So you got a
Yeah.
family, with all this melanin, all this boys, moving out to Kent back in the day when everything was like dirt roads and two lanes. It was a different reality. For us, we grew up in church. We were church people,
Right.
and it was like old school church, like all this new school church stuff. I laugh at because people are like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, they want me to come once a week. I say once a week, man. We was there like 3-4 times a week. Had to get
And
there
long
early.
hours.
Yeah,
Long
right
hours,
there with
what I'm
you.
saying? Because the spirit starts moving, and the childcare workers ain't getting out. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you never want to sign up for the nursery because you don't know if the spirit's going to move.
Yeah,
So
no, you had to be kidnapped to be a child provider in those days.
and so we grew up in church like that. Like, we were always there, and a pretty strict lifestyle. Like, my mom is my hero. November 18th, which is the day we're recording right now, is her birthday. Happy birthday,
Wow.
Aw.
Mom! And so she's one of my heroes. But she had her own thing she was wrestling with, and she shared it pretty openly. But she wanted her boys to look right, to act
Yeah.
right, to be right, and a lot of that was her projecting, a lot of insecurities that she had upon us because she was the youngest, and people kind of, she felt treated like she wasn't able to raise kids, and so she was like, well, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, and my kids are going to be together. And
It's
so
powerful though.
being together was like a way of life for us. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and to be honest, like now at 34, that it serves me, because I don't think I could just walk into a room any type of way. It's
Right.
protected me. It's kept me out of places that I shouldn't have been,
Mm-hmm.
and trouble. But it also, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on a young heart. You know what I mean? It's like, man, am I standing up? And I being true to what my mom wants. Like,
Right.
that's like the scariest thing. I can think of like one time at church, I got in a fight with this dude, and I hit him with a baseball bat. I was like 9. Yeah, he stepped to me. I didn't like the way he was playing with me, right?
I guess not.
Yeah. So I hit him with a baseball bat, and I was getting in trouble by the teacher, and he was walking us down to my parents, and he's like, "I'm gonna go tell your parents." I was not afraid of the teacher. I was not afraid of anybody. You could have called the police. I was not afraid. But if you were gonna tell my mom, there is no worse punishment for me as a child
Tell
than
that
my
truth.
mom knowing, because
Come on.
man, it was like the most creative punishment. It wasn't just like you get a whooping. It was like you get a whooping, and then you're gonna have to wall sit, and then you're gonna make sure that you don't ever go to that class for a year
He
until you
said
get
a
back there.
wall sit.
Oh yeah, wall sit. That was a normal occurrence. Like, you had to control the boys, so it's like, you guys are acting up, everyone go wall sit, right?
Oh my
And
goodness.
so it's just, we were raised to kind of keep
I wondered where those
ourselves.
strong thighs came from.
It was like, I can't hit them. It's not working. So wall sit. So I mean, that put a lot of pressure on us to live a certain way, and
Yeah.
and we became performers. Like, we knew how to turn it on when we needed to turn it off, and turn it off when we needed to turn it off. For the most part, like, my childhood was pretty good. Like, I can't remember too much of like my younger years, but it was around that preteen where just everything shifted for me.
Right.
The day before my birthday, my uncle was murdered in 1998,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and that just wrecked me.
Changes
And
you.
I don't even know, like, one of my brothers asked me, "Were you really close to him?" And I'm like, I mean, he was like the fun uncle, he was the drunk uncle, like
Mm-hmm.
he was the life of the party. But I don't. That's not like I had like a deep relationship. But something in that moment of hearing that, at this pivotal moment in my life, just shook me, and it just brought a lot of anger and darkness and pain and hurt. 6 months later, my cousin was murdered in a different incident,
Oh
and
man.
he was 17 when he was murdered. He was trying to get out of that lifestyle and move
Mm-hmm.
away, and And
Both of
it's
these murders occurred here in the Washington,
yeah,
Seattle
they
area.
both in Seattle. Both in
Okay.
Seattle proper. And so and my cousin, he was 17, and he was like, he's like gangster. So like I looked up to that. I was like, oh yeah, look at him. Like he's got the
Yeah, I
swag, and
remember.
he's got the girls, and he's got the money, and he's got all this. And then to see that stripped away, uh, it harmed me. And so like that sent me on like this rampage of like anger, like hatred. I mean, just didn't want nothing to do with anything. I went to church because church was where we could go. Like we were homeschooled. Like my mom had a tight grip on us. She took me out of football because there was rumors that I was fighting in a football game. A dude said he punched me through my helmet, and I said, "Mom, why would I punch somebody with a helmet on? That don't make no sense." I said, "That's just gonna hurt me. I'm just gonna hit him. I'm gonna spear him. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna punch him,
Right.
right?" But I got taken out. So my community is just the church, but I don't really vibe with it. I don't connect with it. Um, I didn't really see people that looked like me in leadership. My pastor was cool, but I mean, he was a down white boy, and he's still one of my best friends to this day. But it wasn't like me. In 2002, the church funded my family's way to go to camp, and that was the first time I met you. I was 15, and
2002.
2002. I
Go
was
roll.
15, and I wanted nothing to do with any God stuff. Like I was going to camp because there was girls there,
Right.
and because the church helped pay my way.
Yeah.
And I remember being at camp, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy's black. Like just that right there stopped me in my tracks because I'm like, I never to that day in person seen a black preacher.
Wow.
I never been exposed to that. So 15 years of
Wow.
life, been in church 4 times. I never seen a black preacher. And then I was like, and he's talking about like real stuff. Like he suffered. Like he's talking about braces for legs and the crime where he grew up and overcoming these obstacles. And I'm like, man. And then you called me out one of the nights, and it just wrecked me. And I was thinking about that like this year, during some of my quiet times in the
Wow.
season, and you said something that has reigned true for so long that I'm really starting to get some healing from. But you said you may be bored with life. You may be bored with life. And I'm like, man, I spent so much of my life just being bored with life. So
Right.
chasing whatever thrill I could get in order to
Yeah.
escape the boredom. And this year I started receiving some healing from that. But that just kind of led me down a different path, man. I mean, I started by 18, I was working in the church. I'm the sole black pastor. I told my mom that I was going to be the first black pastor our church has ever seen, and I was able to do that. That was a cool moment for me.
That is a
Pastored at
cool
that
moment.
church for 8 years in different various roles, and then I felt burnt after. I was like, man, I gone to church for 26 years. I was dedicated in, and we're going different directions, like in the way we think, and so we split ways. And they're still going. I'm happy for them. I love them. And then I got back into ministry like by accident. Like I wasn't even trying. Like some small church pastor hit me up and became the first black pastor at that church. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I'm there for 3 years. And then starting in 2016, I started a venture to launch a campus of a large mega church in the area. And we launched that church in 2017. Did that for 2.5 years, and here I am today. I got my wife for 13 years. I love her. She's been a rock of support through highs and lows. My
And you've
daughter's
known her
10.
much longer than that, right?
We started. We're 16 years into the game, so we're 16
Okay.
years into knowing each other, dating, and then we married for 13. So it's
Wow.
beautiful. We got a 10-year-old daughter who is all the fire that I can handle. You know what I'm saying? Like
Feel you there.
that girl. Oh my
Both my
gosh.
girls are wild. Yeah, I get you.
She's wild. And then I got a 8-year-old son, and the boy is just biggest heart, and fastest mouth. He always got something to say. He's quick with his wit. I love my kids. I love my kids, and I love my wife, and I love my family. So yeah, it's a little about me. I know it's a lot, but thank you guys for listening.
No, it's a pleasure, man. When I look at you and I think about the journey you've been through, just to hear you kind of tell your story. Obviously, in a lot of ways, I was on staff at the City Church, which is kind of all over the world now, but they've turned into church home. And when I came on to the staff, there was a little bit of black presence, but when I say little, I mean very little. Now, the voice was Aaron Haskins. So it's one of the loudest voices in the Northwest. He was predominant pastor before he passed away, and he was really a multicultural bridge in the region. But a lot of times, just being on staff, it felt almost less pastoral, and it felt more like marketing. So my presence, like you kind of said, you had never seen it, which is powerful. I'm glad to be used in that capacity. I think that we need to let our gifts be used, particularly for our community. However, there's a degree of exploitation that I can't help but kind of feel like happens through the church when it comes to our gifts, our ethnicity, our cultures, our cultural background. Kind of talk to me a little bit about your whole family, because your older brother coached my sons playing football, was a bridge in the community in those regards. I mean, he wasn't necessarily 24/7 in church, kind of like you. He jumped out fairly quickly, as I remember. But still a huge impact in the community of Kent. He always swore he was a great football player. I think he was more of a waddle back than he was a running back. But he served my kids like they were princes. I mean, he helped them mature from princes to kings. I mean, he put everything into them, and so to me, he's the baddest running back to ever come out of Kent, and I'm out of Kent. So, and the reason I say that is because he impacted my kids' lives. Now, for you, you're in the city, impacting thousands of people's lives, but you're wrestling with your own issues. Do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your internal state of mind while you're using your gifts to express change for others and impacting others?
Yeah, I mean, so the last 3-4 years, I started hitting like some crazy serious like levels of depression. I was sick, and what's crazy is when you're up there and you're offering healing for people and hope, and you walk off the stage and you don't have any hope for yourself and no healing for yourself, and you don't even want to be home with your family. That is a tension that you live under that really just starts to destroy you. And so I always looked at it like when I was serving people, like, man, I love people, and I believe that it's my job, my call, my mission is to get the best out of people, however I do that. And so I was just always, putting other people first, caring for people, caring for me. But in the midst of that, like, I had no concept of caring for myself. Like, what does it mean to take care of yourself? And I've talked to just a lot of people just about that concept of self-care. And I've had people like, what self-care? Like, what? Like, what do you?
What does that even mean?
Right. You gotta take care of yourself. So like every spiritual tradition has like patterns for self-care. I mean, you see like Jesus, and Christians like, this guy's like God, like he's got it all, and he's like, yeah, I gotta get away, I gotta go by myself, I gotta take care of myself. And he's connecting, with the divine in that moment, so that he can even have something to give. I lost that, man. I lost that. I wasn't, and I didn't know how to, and I'm not sure that the system creates space for it.
What's interesting that you say that is I grew up under senior pastors, which I love them, the greatest heroes in my life in a lot of ways. Pastor Wendell and Jenny Smith were absolutely phenomenal from the degree of which they poured into my life. But I was brought up in ministry with this very odd kind of mindset, because they were youth pastors their entire life. They actually would teach from the pulpit, one-on-one meetings, any kind of a counseling session. Hey, listen, don't even worry about your children, and to this extremity. If you take care of God's children, he'll take care of your children. And I think that that's a very slippery slope in the sense that we have to be mindful of our personal condition, our state of mind. We also need to be cognitive of our family's state of mind, and that where they're at and what they're struggling with, because in the end, it's really the internal brokenness that destroys us, nothing from the external.
Yeah. And my grandparents were missionaries to Africa for 27 years. And my mom, my aunt, my uncles, they grew up in boarding school in Ivory Coast for a long time. And that mentality is so strong
Right.
that, there was a lot of negative things that happened to my aunts and uncles and my mom, that they weren't protected under that idealism that they're just going to be automatically protected.
Right.
And I think that it is a very slippery slope, and that people really need to think about that in a very different way.
Yeah, I think that we need to communicate it to our communities in a very different way.
Yeah.
Our first priority shouldn't be to our neighbor. Our first
Right.
priority should be to our children.
100%.
Our first priority should, and this sounds selfish, but it should be to ourselves, to mature ourselves, to develop ourselves, to as you talked about Christ getting separated, getting away. I think that really is the first and highest priority, because that's how, if you have not built yourself, you have nothing to give. And so I really think that when we look at it, oftentimes we're giving out of our scar tissue rather than our healthy meat, rather than our lifeline. We're giving out of a dry line.
Right.
And what happens as a result of that is the people that feed off of that, they can sense something is off, something is missing. And it really doesn't build like it's supposed to.
It's funny because the campus that you built in Kent, that you opened up, I had gone to the main campus in Renton for years with my mom and Logan when he was little.
That's
he
funny.
went to the Sunday schools there, and so I went there for years, loved it. But then I moved out in the Kent area, and that drive, it's not terrible, but sometimes drives feel long, and
Sure.
so.
Well,
but
and
then,
I think that by the time you went to visit this campus, you were a different person.
Right. Because we grow, we change. Sometimes our thoughts and our ideologies change. And so anyway, when I heard that they were opening a Kent campus, I was excited. I was like, hey, that's not too far from us. And so my now 9-year-old at the time, so I took him and we went to the Kent campus, and then I, saw that you were the pastor. Now, I didn't know you, which is funny because Richard knew you, but I didn't know you. But I remember feeling, wow, there's a black pastor here. Like, that was very surprising to me.
Sure.
And, very similar to you, I grew up going to church pretty much my entire life. And we were the 3 to 4 times a week family too.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, Sunday night, Saturdays, Wednesdays. Like, we were always there. And then when I was about 16, I was burnt out. I mean, I was just done. And I remember telling my mom, you can't make me go to church anymore.
Ever.
I mean, my older brother and I have 6 brothers. And so, my older brother and I, we were just like, nope, we're done. You're not going to force us to go anymore. And honestly, it took almost 10 years before I actually stepped foot in church again. And, so to see you, it was shocking, because growing up in church, I definitely didn't see a black pastor in any of our churches. And I mean, we were lucky if we saw a black family in our church, let alone a pastor. So for me, that was very encouraging and exciting to see that, but that can obviously have a lot of complications in itself. And I know that you had a lot of scars growing up and things that, affected you. How does that affect you going into something like this, into a position where now you're leading people, you're teaching people, and you still have scars of your own?
Yeah, so I avoided even dealing with the reality that I had scars. So it was just kind of like, you just get into go mode and you're just going, building your career, building your life, trying to get better at these things, trying to step up the game, whatever that means, in whatever world you're in. And I never paid attention to it. I mean, some of the pain that I had, like around my uncle, I knew it was there because every October I faced depression, every month for years, 20 plus years of my life, where I would have depression during that month. But besides that, like I just went. I just was going. But I didn't realize it was kind of like when you have like this deep setting wound in your soul, and then you try to build your life on that. It's like building your life on something that has no foundation. And so it's like my life started building kind of like when you get Jenga going, and it's just going higher and higher and higher. And you got that one little block at the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Like that's holding the whole thing up. And you finally get that one thing on the very top. and the whole thing comes crumbling down. And
So
I
good.
could manage the complexity for a certain period of time, but then I got to this point where it was just far too complex that I just imploded. It was like
Yeah.
I could no longer do this because my foundation wasn't solid. And so this whole year it's just been about like getting back down to that foundation. Like, who are you? Who am I? And being true to that in the realest way. But being like a black pastor in, a white, predominantly white church, it always has its fun parts. Like I was thinking when you were saying, I come in and I couldn't believe there was a black pastor. Well, apparently nobody else could either. So here's what I do. Check this. This is so funny. I never would wear like a microphone or anything. I didn't want people to know I was the pastor when they walked in the building. So there was nothing that distinguished me from anybody else. I was just a dude walking around the lobby, and I would go meet people that I didn't know because I'm like, man, I've never seen this person before. I'm gonna meet them, and just watching like how they react to me when they meet me before church. They kind of like stand off, just like, oh, like why are you talking to me? Like, and I'd always laugh, and then I would jump on stage, and I would look them right in the eye.
And say,
like,
welcome.
My name is Gabe. I'm the pastor here. If it's your first time, I really would love to meet you. I want to connect with you. Right?
Wow.
And I'm saying it, and I'm looking at them, and they come up after me like, I had no idea you're a pastor. One dude's like, I thought you were the security guard. And I was like, well, I could double up if I need to. You know what I'm saying?
We do what we must.
So there's a lot of funny moments, and then, hard moments too, like, because you're constantly, you don't realize it until you put the spotlight on it, but your whole life is crossing a cultural line.
Right.
It's like, I mean, imagine living in a foreign country all the time. It's like, I don't know what people are talking about. I got to play by their rules. In a sense, it kind of felt like that because it's like, I got to play by these rules, but then when I get around this group, I'm playing by these rules, and you're always going back and forth and trying to figure out which hat to wear in order to keep whatever image that people need.
It's funny you say what hat to wear. I work in sales, and so I definitely put on a Caucasian hat when I answer the phone.
Yes.
And it's indistinguishable. It's the hats; they're slight different color of green. They call it the sellout hat in a lot of part of our community, but it's called my get paid hat. And so I got my get paid hat. And then I got my Caucasian hat because I'm half white, so it's always laying around. It's usually halfway dusty. Got a bottle of whiskey laying on it somewhere in the corner and a Bud Light in it. But I can shake it off if I need to. So I'll shake that hat off, put it on, and sometimes I'll damn near forget which hat I'm wearing.
I know
where I'm at. You
let your guard down.
Yeah, messing around and be in the inner city of Chicago. Had the wrong hat on. And I talk a little different. I don't get my barbecue. I'm like, hey man, why am I waiting on my barbecue so long? They're like, oh, you're not the same cat that ordered. You had a different hat on.
It took me to my 30s to realize that I live like that. I didn't even realize it because I just thought it was so normal. But there's those moments where you, as a person of color, let down your guard and you let your black show. And you do it like in a meeting or something, like in a boardroom, and everyone's gathered around trying to solve a problem. And you just slam your head on the table and you say, this is stupid. Why are we wasting time? Right? And people are like, oh, that's disrespectful. I'm like, no. I love you guys. That's why I talk to you. Never mind. I can't even explain it.
There's no way to express this.
Because if you were with my family, you would think we hate each other, but we got the deepest love for one another and so much respect. It's just the way that we do things.
It's funny you say that because I've been in since COVID, of course, happened, and then George Floyd and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, and which has always been around. I don't know why people think this is new.
Right.
But we always been protesting one way or another. Since they dragged us on those slave ships, whether it was just throwing ourselves into the sea. It's not like we have willingly gone along with this oppression and this hatred any step of the journey. But with media and then social media the way that it is now, people are really in dialogue about it online. And so it's very interesting because I was in a deep conversation. I mean, I was letting them have it about why I believe this party over that party, and I'm using the I not only had my hat on, I had my cowboy hat on. I mean, I'm so deep in it, you think it's Professor Richard. I'm so proper and so into it, and it started at about 7:15, 7:30 at night. And it's 8:30 at night and 9 o'clock at night. And I went from light liquor early in the evening to now my dark liquor's out. The darker my liquor getting, apparently the darker I'm getting. I don't know, but I got cats on there. It's 1 o'clock in the morning at this point. I'm still engaged. I'm still loving them. I'm still giving them everything I can from both perspectives, and just as sweet as can be. And then it gets to be about 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I'm the most divisive, hateful. That they're telling me you're the most divisive, the most hateful. All your posts that you post are evil. Right. You don't got God in your life. I remember you, Richard, when you loved Jesus. I'm like, fool, Jesus is sitting right next to me right now. What you talking about? They just flip it up on me, and I said, what? I know what it is. They have never seen me with this hat on.
They don't know you as the Black Richard.
Yeah, they don't know me as in the context of my house.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say, you slam the table and say something in a boardroom. What I say is I say it this way. If I invite you over to my home and I speak to you kindly and you don't respond, don't be surprised if I say, hey, mofo, and I say it in a different way. And I say, listen, I didn't invite you over here to bullshit. I've invited you over here to have a good time.
Yeah.
MF, take this glass of Hennessy and let me get you some ribs. Calm your little ass down, right? But they don't recognize that voice because that's not a voice that's comfortable to them because they've never had to venture out from their comfort zone to ever really meet us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the awkward thing about relationships or interracial relationships or people of and I've met Hispanics who feel very similar in the sense of thinking black people are angry people. No, we're not. It's just you've only met us in the context of your comfort zone.
Right.
And if you've ever ventured out of your comfort zone to meet us in our playgrounds, and you realize, wait a minute, we play the same. Our language is just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our communication style is just different.
We're a demonstrative culture, and but this is why so much beauty comes out of our culture, art, and I think because those things are part of demonstration. You demonstrate that, and so as a demonstrative culture, like that's not the wider culture. It's kind of like reserved, be careful, calculated, and it's like you can't come to my family reunion because if you see me black, you're gonna get scared. And the reality is when you've learned how to be so fluent in crossing those lines, is that people actually do forget you're black until you say something that reminds them, and then they're like, "Oh, I thought you were different." Then what?
Yeah.
Please explain that, right? Because now I'm crossing the line and I'm showing you who I really am, and I long for a day where it's like we don't have to cross the lines. Like we can be authentic to who we are within our cultural expression. And
so
I pray that my kids can experience that.
Well, I know Richard and we've actually talked a few times on our podcast about the cultural differences and how they come across, and just in our relationship, especially in our early relationship, getting to really know each other, when I use this term lovingly, but when I got to know the Black Richard, which was very different than the Richard that I had known in church and the Richard that I thought he was, it was very shocking for me because I was not prepared for that. I didn't understand that there's a lot culturally, especially in Black communities, that's very, very different than growing up in a white community. And so, where I took, why are you so angry? Why are you so loud all the time? Like, it's not him being angry. It's not him being, this person that I thought. It's just a cultural thing. And so, so many people don't take the time to understand that there is cultural differences in how people communicate and how they're raised within their own families and communities. And I believe this is why we have a lot of issues. We have a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear from the white communities because they just don't understand, and they haven't taken the time to understand that it's just a different way of communicating. that's really all it is.
But it's very early in our relationship, and we are very demonstrative. However, and she's with it. She's trying to grow with it. And the thing that I love about people is when they try to grow. And so we're talking about a very passionate topic in our house, like who left the toothpaste off, or why the hell ain't you put on the toilet? You wiped your ass last. Why didn't you put a new toilet roll on there? If you use it all, you should. We probably talking about something like that.
Yeah.
Something very simple. Like, damn it, I don't want fish. I want steak. Whatever our topic is. And she's getting more and more demonstrative in the car. She's thinking, oh, I'm keeping pace with this little argument. I'm going to give him what he's giving me. And I looked at her in the eyes. I said, in the middle of the Safeway, here, take these keys, because you can't talk to me any old way in public or I'm going to get arrested. And so there is that cultural understanding of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And a lot of times, I'm sure as a pastor, you face this, where white America comes to you all the time to be the educator of what's culturally appropriate, what's culturally inappropriate. Kind of share some of that too, because I think that in your situation, you probably had a ton of pressure. You've got this Django piece that you're talking about at the very bottom, right? It's Django. You got this little broken piece at the very bottom, but you've probably got every direction. Hey, explain culture to me. Explain why Black Lives Matter is godly and so forth. Share a little bit of that in the context of the world that you live in, but you're living in a predominantly Republican picture. The Evangelical Church is a picture of Republican Jesus, which is different than biblical Jesus, which is different than reality Jesus, which is a whole different set of dominoes. I don't know if we want to get into, but share a little bit about that kind of pressure that you feel being in a church. Also being in a white world where you have to always be the educator of culture and what's racist and what's not racist.
Yeah, I mean it's a real thing. You're the black guy on staff, and you got to have the conversations about the black things. When somebody feels that they're disrespected, people come to you about those types of things. Where I was able to keep myself out of those types of conversations more often than not was there was a culture ingrained at New Life where we don't really deal with any of those things. So for me, what very fascinating is that was part of my dominoes or my Jenga that's breaking, because I'm not a guy that's silent. I don't know what to do with silence, and so
suppression is not easy for us.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta get it out. I gotta get it out. The pressure's building, and I'm watching this, and I gotta say something. I gotta speak truth to this, and so. I faced more of that, to where I felt like, man, I can't say anything about Black Lives Matter, where I could say it behind closed doors and like meetings, and I can play the logic game. Yeah, I could play the logic game, but I remember I can't get demonstrative or emotional about it. I have to do it in the logic, non-emotional, rational way. So there was no space, or at least I didn't feel like there's space for me to show pain around these things that were going on in our society. I just had to get down to the logic with it. And so people would say things like, well, Black Lives Matter, obviously that's not a good thing. I'm like, obviously, I don't know what you mean by obviously. And then I asked them a question. I said, do you like Martin Luther King Jr.? Yeah, he changed the world. I said, a lot of black people didn't. And most white people didn't. And I have black people that are in my family that are passed away that didn't like him because he was making too much of a stink for them. They wanted to live their life. And I said, the fact of the matter is that no matter what movement is going on, nobody aligns with it 100%. I said, by the way, I would not be marching with Martin because he was like, get beat up. Nope, not me. You know what I'm saying? He's like, just lay there. I mean, I would have been with Malcolm. I'd have been like, nah, let's get the, let's protect ourselves. Let's stand up for our rights. Like Martin's no, peace.
I'd have been with Martin going there. It'd have been on the way back. I turned the cheek I got to turn. So you smacked that one. I want to let you know I'm coming back now, and I'm coming back with an army because we came to make some.
It was aggressive,
right?
Yeah.
It was aggressive, and he wasn't popular. I mean, you're you're hated when you're there, and then you're a hero when you die. You know what I mean? So it's like
So
everyone's
good,
like,
man.
oh, and now there's a road in every state named after him, and
The
we got a
brokest road in the
day,
state.
and yeah, always every state, right? And so, but we got a day, and like, oh, we have this month where we celebrate these things, and I was like, but if you were there, and I wasn't, but
Yeah.
I know people that were, it was very polarizing. And so then I asked him, so why is Black Lives Matter different? I said, we're gonna die, and our grandkids are gonna be thanking us for the work that they did, the same way that my grandma probably didn't really enjoy Martin Luther King Jr. and what he was doing, but she's glad she got her great grandbabies that are mixed.
So good.
Right. Well, one thing that has really just driven me crazy, especially this year with COVID and with, all the murders that have happened and the protests and the riots. And I don't know how many people on social media, obviously, especially from white people on social media, they're always throwing Martin Luther King out there, right?
Sure.
To somehow say what everybody's doing today with the riots and the protest is wrong, and Martin Luther King would be ashamed if he was alive today at this display. And I said to them, yeah, but we killed Martin Luther King, so I'm pretty sure that you should not be throwing his name around as if it's the right thing to do, because
Well, I think equally as valuable is that every protest that white people have initiated against black people has not been a protest of peace.
right.
When you look at Tulsa, you look at lynchings, you look at voter suppression, you look at
Right.
different elements of racism that's occurred in the world that we live in. None of that was kumbaya. None of it was, hey, let's have a sit down, let's have a logical conversation about why it's bad for a capitalistic system for us not to have class structure. If we were to really analyze this, if we don't have a lower class, and that's just what you're said as the curse of Ham, if you act up, then we're not going to have a working populace. So it's not been an intellectual conversation that they had. They came with pitchforks, and they came with burning crosses, and they were demonstrative in their approach to keeping us silent. But as far as us responding to pain or hurt, they want us to be quiet. And so I think that you're in such a powerful position of analysis to really talk about, you've got this scar, right? From the very foundations of your youth. Let's take your uncle, for instance, and then I think later on you actually lost someone even closer than that, where you have these scars that are in your mind, that are in your soul, that are broken places, and it's never addressed. You're never able to express that pain. So it becomes a fundamental Jenko piece at the bottom of your base. You're never able to go back and dismantle your life because you're asked to be quiet, not to be public about your pain. It'll offend, it'll hurt, it'll cast doubt on the bigger organization. And so you're in a position where you're always toppling and never able to stand on firm foundation of knowing where I'm going. And so how did that affect your vision? Because they say that those without vision really perish. They really begin to die inside. They really begin to, lose hope. And those without hope, or hope deferred, become sicker and sicker and sicker. And that internal defeat, even though you're having external victory, what's happening to you as a man as that's going on in your life?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think about was just growing the career. And so there was no vision around my family, no thought as to what my marriage could be, no thought as to, what does it look like, in 15 years when my kids are grown, and it's me and my wife, or what about my kids? Like, are they gonna love us? There was no thought about those things, and it was just building the career. It's just kind of like the only thing I had the energy, the emotional
Powerful,
energy
man.
to really put into. But what ends up happening is then the other things, like your family, all those things start crumbling away because you're degrading. They're watching the dark side of you. You know what I mean? Like when you get home, when you're depressed, when you can't get out of the bed, when you're hiding.
That's powerful, man.
When you're hiding in the green room, before you have to go on stage and crying, and then walking out on stage acting like you have it all together. They see the real, They see the habit of, you get home at 3 o'clock from church and I pour the drink and that's it. It's
Right.
done. And scroll through social media to watch all the criticism. So it's like they saw the real, and so it's like there was nothing like really gluing us together because I had no thought about them. I could just focus on one thing. It ate me up.
Man.
It ate me up. Those were some dark places. The beauty that comes out of it is when you go through like a dark place like that, it does make you call for some type of light. I mean, you reaching for any kind of light you can
Right.
find. You're like, I'll grab anything. And so it brought me to that point.
Something that growing up in church that I have noticed, and I kind of want to touch a little bit on the mental health aspect of this, because you have mentioned this a couple times in your struggle with depression. I feel like there's such an expectation that is unrealistic that is put on pastors and people in leadership position within churches that people don't want to believe that you have a mental illness you're struggling with. And the truth is, especially in churches, a lot of churches aren't real key on even talking about mental health, let alone seeking treatment outside the church for mental health. They don't want to recognize that it's a problem, but it's a really big problem. And
It is.
as you mentioned, the burnout, that is a very real thing for people in ministry. And I've seen it with my own family members and other people that I know. And people don't take that into consideration because they have this expectation that your life and your personal life is, in a completely different level. And, so when there is an issue, it goes unaddressed, it goes ignored, and we hide it in the closet. We don't want people to really know that that's a problem. And so, will you talk about that for a minute, kind of like that journey, because it is such a real thing
So powerful.
that people don't talk about.
And it goes beyond just the church too. It
Yeah.
happens in our workplaces.
Absolutely.
It happens in our military. It happens everywhere where we float our pain in a light way to kind of test the waters. We put it out there like a fly fishing, seeing if anyone will strike to really respond to it. And then when we get nothing back, and we get only ridicule back about the weak, about victimization, about crying victim, it really silences you. And I'm so very proud of you, really, for saying what you battled, because I think that in so many ways the real pain is that we turn our heroes into people that never say anything.
Right.
And that's not a hero at all. That is someone that has decided to check out of reality.
Yeah.
And so instead we and this is, I'm gonna be careful here. Instead of calling the weakness in someone that they revealed their strength for being able to do it.
Yeah.
Well, if it's out now, we begin to promote people like Donald Trump to the highest position in our office because he's a fake and a liar and deceives the people. And I say that not knowing your political position, really don't care. I'm gonna be honest with you in those regards.
Speak your truth.
Because,
Speak your truth.
When you begin to build up men who are silent and angry and they can hold that pain in, all of a sudden you begin to find fractured people that become in leadership positions.
Yeah.
That lead not out of integrity, not out of character, not out of honesty. They lead out of a broken place with some Django piece far in his past, where Daddy Trump obviously hurt him and broke him and made him think that anger and calling people names and entering into division was the way that he was going to be able to bully himself into a position. And now all of a sudden you see it, because when he's not reelected, you haven't seen anything from him other than crying, other than complaining. He's not there to transition. He's not there to lead. He's not there to say, hey, I made some mistakes, but I'll be back in 2024. He's not even, to be honest, he's not even there leading the fight for what he thinks would be justice. He's literally retreating into a place called a crybaby place. It's a place where he should have retreated to 40 years ago and dealt with the pain in his life. And I know I went off a little tangent,
That's
but
okay.
we see what happens when that Django piece is not dealt with. And I'm so proud of you for saying I had depression, no matter what it cost you at the moment. And I hope you get into that a little bit, because there is a cost to being honest.
Yeah.
No matter what it cost you at the moment, what you're going to gain from it is going to be so much more incredible in the long run, because you're going to be true to who you are. You said, speak your truth. You're going to have the opportunity out of this to live your truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Donald Trump's a great picture of part of the issue in our culture, is that we idolize like this one great man, this hero story, this person that like has no flaws. But the interesting thing is like he proposes that he's like the greatest thing ever. Like everything he does is the greatest ever. Everything's a record. Like like everything. And it's like he
I beat my record from my record.
Yeah, he's like, man, I break my own records because nobody else is even on the page. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's a perfect metaphor for the world that we live in. That that there's this picture where if you're ascending, whether it's Christianity, church, business, that you have your crap together. But the thing is that they're all broken at the top.
Absolutely.
I mean, they just have more money and more freedom to spend their brokenness on. I mean, they're just
so good
because they built up their life on these scars. And so in the church world, where a lot of my hurt, and not a lot of it, but the good portion of it, though, actually, a lot of it, where a lot of it came from, it's like, man, so if I'm honest about what's really going on in my life, this, like, I can't be here,
right?
Like
so good. Tell it, Gabe.
Like, am I, like, at what point are we like supposed to like lie about? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
right.
I'm even like losing words for it, because I just can't even put words to it, because it doesn't like compute for me. You have to maintain an image.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's because for so long they batter you with don't tell the full truth, to where now when it comes your opportunity to express it, you don't have the words because you've never developed the language. We've never been taught as men to develop an honest language of dealing with failure, dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with the things that attack men. Not only men, but it attacks women as well. I mean, for so long, Tiffany hit me time and time again. And I tried to tell her, baby, I'm not over here to have no counseling session. I'm over here for a drink and something else. But time and time again, baby, you got to deal with this. You got to deal with this. You got to deal with this. I'm not dealing with shit. You don't know me like that yet, but I do know you. I do know your Django piece. And so talk about that, because it's so powerful that you can live in that truth.
Yeah, I mean, that was a long journey, because it took me a while. Like, because you see the picture of what I put up, like I get up on stage and this is what people are saying about me, and it's all good stuff. Like, they're not talking mess, they're celebrating, wow, this is so awesome. And then I go home and I'm like, there's a gap between what they see and what's really going on. And they think I'm this guy, and I'm not that guy. Like, I wish I was. Like, I want to live up to other people's expectations, or I wanted to. I don't want it anymore. I did want to. I wanted them to see me as that guy. But I put that image just so high, and that's part of the culture within the church, because they all know they're all messed up. Like, you get behind the closed doors, and they talk about their depression, they talk about their anxiety, they talk, and they all have it. Okay, so like they all have some measure of anxiety, whether how they medicate that anxiety is different, right? And so one person's like, oh, I medicate it by doing a home improvement project, and they rip up their house. Another person medicates it by doing drugs. Another person playing video games. Another person's drinking. Another person's working out excessively. They're doing something to try to turn off that anxiety switch, instead of just going to the core of it. And then you get on stage and you act like you don't have it. And what's scary is, at least in my experience, there's two different churches. There's the church behind the doors in the office, and then there's the church on Sunday. And I found that the people on Sunday are a lot more gracious, a lot more forgiving, and a lot more understanding than the church behind the office doors. Because as I've shared my story, I thought I was going to be met with judgment and hatred, and it's just open arms and embrace. And I'm like, wow, the people, man, y'all about it. And then on this side, it's like, well, there's a qualification. There's you've been disqualified for a season. You can be healed. You can be restored. How do we know if you're well? Like all of those questions where I'm like, man, this is just too much. This is too much. And so really coming out, like I thought when I was coming out with a lot of this stuff, because I deep depression, I was drinking profusely. Like I had a drink to sleep. It was like 3 shots. That's my nightcap. That's how I go to sleep. And then, taking these medications because this is what I'm prescribed. But now I'm like mixing medications and alcohol. And man, I was bad. I was in a bad spot. And I come out and I'm like, this is gonna heal me, right? Because as an idealist, I'm like, the scripture says, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you might be healed. So I'm like, this is my route to healing. And then I did it, and it was like, hey, we love you. We want to support you, but we need you to heal over here.
Right.
With this group of people that you don't really know, but just trust them and heal with them. And I'm like, you're asking a black guy in 2020 to trust some white dudes that he ain't never met to tell his deepest, darkest pains to. It's like, it's just not happening, my man. It's not happening.
And it's not authentic. It's not real.
Yeah. It wasn't real for me. And for some, it may be, but for me, it's just, I'm checking a box. I'm not really pursuing my healing because there's no connection here. There's no heart. And so, it's a wild thing, but coming out, like at the moment, like I thought it was going to heal me. I got hit with like a boulder and I was like, oh my gosh, this is worse than I thought. And now looking at it like 10 months ago, actually 11 now, I'm like, okay. I'm like, I see what God's doing. I see what Spirit's doing. Like something beautiful is being woven back together. And I thought at the time, all I wanted to do was get back on that stage. And that was part of the sickness that I needed to get out of my life so that I could actually really heal like the deep, dark parts of my heart.
That's powerful, man. Go ahead.
No, I just want to just thank you because, the truth is one thing that Richard and I try really hard to do with our podcast at the Lionheart Institute is to speak truth and to own it and to be transparent because you can't reach people and have them be able to connect with you or your story or to have them have any kind of understanding or think that, hey, maybe I can do this if they can't feel your genuineness. Right. And we live, especially in society today with social media, what it is, everybody's living a fake life out there. Yeah. I mean, it's only the best parts of their selves, or even with some people, their made up self, of what they want the world to perceive them as. Yeah, gotta love filters, and so, there's no realism out there. It's just this idea that doesn't exist, and the expectations on people to live up to these fake lives and ideologies is just unrealistic. And because of that, we see so many broken people. We see so many people who are hurting and in pain and suffering alone because they feel ostracized, by people that they trust or that they thought would be there to help them when they learned the truth of what was going on. And, I just thank you so much for sharing your heart and being open with the fact that, hey, I was a pastor and I was struggling because it's a very real thing, and so I think it's a beautiful opportunity for people to just hear your heart and see what you've been through, what you've struggled with, what you're overcoming, because it's so important today.
I couldn't celebrate that anymore. Yeah. Couldn't hand clap that anymore. I think that the reality of the braveness inside of you, because I've been in that world, to take that step, to trust the scripture all of a sudden and say, confess your sins one to another and you will be healed. And you recognize, wait a minute, is it really the agenda of this organization, this church, to heal, or is it the agenda of this organization to protect itself? Yeah. To play, and I don't think that there's been anything more revealing about the Evangelical Republican Church than has been revealed over the last year. Yeah. We've always kind of known where they stood. We've kind of known what their position is, but it is almost impossible to be in the church today and not really say, hey, we're political hypocrites.
Yep.
We are social hypocrites. We're racial hypocrites.
Yeah.
Now, I get it. There's a lot of people who will say that, of course, all hypocrites are in church. And that is true. There is a certain degree of hypocrisy that happens in any organization that is and it's going to be true at a AAU meeting or whatever they're called, or Drugs Are Anonymous or Sex is Anonymous or whatever organization trying to heal. People are going to be dishonest. I get that. Okay, but when it comes to leadership, I've been in places where it's all about the money. I've been in places where it's all about the manipulation of the masses. Well, some places don't care about the money, but they sure enough care about the fame. Some places don't care about the fame, but they sure enough care about the money. So, there's a sickness in the evangelical church that needs to be rooted out. And it can only be rooted out if there's honesty that occurs and openness to what plagues us. And I think that there is some people that are really pursuing that. I think that there are some, obviously the body, what we would call the body of Christ, Christians, that are trying to pursue that. But certainly some pastors that are really starting to come to a place where they say, you know what? We need to stop being the letter of the law and be the spirit of the law. We need to express the reality of what God the Father, the Spirit desires of our life, including saying, hey, you know what? God not only has a masculine form, but has a feminine form, has a softer, gentler form, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I can't celebrate you any more than she did in that beautifully well said portion you did, because it's true. You being able to face what you had to face, reveal what you had to reveal, revealed a lot about the people around you. But it takes you back to the Django piece where you can renegotiate your foundation and you can build off of that. Yeah.
And that's been the thing that's been changing everything for my family, my life. When we stepped out, kicked out, whatever we call it, we went home for 6 months and just home, and no working. Church was like, we're gonna help you financially for these months. And so that was really nice, but it just gave me space to just sit and just, who am I? Who are we? Let's heal some of these deep wounds. Our world got incredibly wounded during this time. I mean, we went into, we were already wounded with, the current administration. Our world's been a little wounded for 4 years.
Sure.
And then we had these lives taken away. You know what I mean? These precious lives. Somebody out jogging, chased down. Okay. Someone kicks in someone's doors, kills a woman. A man choked out, and then a worldwide pandemic. And so, like, all of like everyone's pain came to the surface, and it was almost like God giving everybody a chance to heal. Like, hey, I'm gonna bring up all your mess this year, everything you could possibly think of, and you can get rid of the dross, or you can keep it. But you could be shining at the end of the year, and you can be a different person, or you could be the same person. And I watched some people really pursue that this year. It's like, man, they're going after really healing those broken as they surface. And then I watched people that just said, I'm okay with my dross. I'm okay with that mess. I'll keep it. And I'm committed to this, And we saw people double down with what they thought, and it was like, wow, like this is a collective moment where we could make a global shift where humanity, where people could be different. We could heal. We could do something amazing. And so it's been a year of beauty, healing, pain, tears, suffering, all types of fun.
Well, I think that what people don't realize is that out of the brokenness comes the breakthrough. People want to talk all the time about the message. They want to talk about, wow, Gabriel's message is so powerful. I believe that if you're part of the Lionheart Institute audience, you're going to find this a very powerful message. Yeah. You're going to find the things that he's attributed to his success and what's really going to make him a success. A very, very powerful message. But it's really important to recognize, and I know this is very churchy, I love to preach, miss it sometimes, but it's really the mess that gives the message validity. Yeah. Right? It's the mess that you came out of that makes it so powerful. And so I look back at the brokenness you came through, and I'm walking with you, I'm talking with you when you're a young man. I'm living with you, breathing with you, playing basketball with you, helping my own sons develop character integrity as we're doing it, and still not knowing all the mess. And so I think it's important to recognize, while you're looking at the beauty and the message that a person can have, the important thing is that you consider in your heart, when you're dealing with people, the mess that they're in.
Yeah.
And COVID has revealed the mess that this
The
world is in.
mess. My God.
So much deeper than I think people even
talk
knew.
about how COVID is really designed, whether it's genetically designed.
Right.
I don't want to get into too much conspiracy. YouTube might flag me as the wrong kind of channel and not monetize me. Now the thing, the conspiracy theory channel. Whether you think it's built by man or whether you think it's just, evolution or whatever that occurred for COVID to happen. COVID functions best when there's an underlying condition. And so COVID in and of itself, a lot of people catch COVID, but it never really matures or develops into a life-ending disease.
Right.
The reason that it becomes a life-ending disease is when somebody fat like me catches it, right? God forbid that happens.
Yeah.
But then what happens is that underlying heart disease or that underlying fat disease, or it builds off it and exposes it. Well, we're in a COVID age right now, baby, where mental depression, it's attacking that area and it's causing people to crumble.
Yeah.
Selfishness, greed, corruption.
Yeah.
It's grabbing onto those areas and making everything worse. And so the powerful thing that COVID gives us, though, is it gives us the opportunity to lay our ass down and do just what you've done for the last year.
Yeah.
And self-reflect and self-heal and focus on our breathing. Make sure them lungs don't lock up on us.
Right.
Keep breathing.
Yep.
Find our peace. Stop running from our pain. Say, okay, let's deal with this. Let's get center. And we could emerge out of this an immune people to such diseases in the future.
And more importantly too is to find your truth.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you have to live with you.
Yeah.
And, if you aren't happy, and as you said earlier, you were bored, if you get to a place in life where you're just going through routines day after day, it's just a routine, it's just a job, it's just living life, or you're not really living.
Yeah.
Okay, you're surviving. There's a big difference. Too many people are just surviving right now, and they aren't truly living because they're not being true to themselves. They're not acknowledging their own challenges in their lives, any weaknesses that they need to address, any hurdles that need to be, taken care of. That people just slam that mountain and they just give up, and instead of learning how to climb over it. And when you can start to refocus and start to speak your truth, no matter what it is, live it.
So good.
Because it's going to make you a healthy, happier person. And so regardless of what
Which
that
makes
is,
you a better gift to your
absolutely, you're going to do more in your life by being true to who you are.
Yeah.
And everybody else is going to have a stronger message to tell if they're true to themselves, because that conviction and that passion that you feel is going to flow through, and you're going to be able to reach so many more people.
Yeah.
So, just as you did, the strength and the courage it took for you to own your truth and own the issues that you were struggling with is going to bring you out, and has brought you out in the end, a stronger person, and a person who now knows this is my truth.
Yeah. And I went into my truth kicking and screaming. I mean, I'll write a book one day, and I'll put all the good chapters up front. You know what I mean? Like, I did this, and I went into my pain, and I went into the darkness, and I walked through it. But I did a lot of it kicking and screaming. Like, I was like, man, I want to do this. This hurts. This is not comfortable. I resisted. And what's so funny is every time in this season that I stopped resisting, some breakthrough would happen. Like, I didn't have a job for a long time. I applied everywhere, month after month after month. And then when I finally got okay that I didn't have a job, and I was like, you know what?
That's wild.
I'm okay with it. It's like the next week I got a job. And I was like, this is stupid. like why couldn't I get it when I really, as soon as I came okay with being home and just, I'm okay. And it's like at every moment throughout the season, I've resisted but it was just like there was this hand that was guiding me throughout this. Like, no, you're gonna keep going. Like you started this journey, and
Yep.
you opened the door, and now the whole Jenga tower is down. So we're starting over anyway.
Right.
Right.
And I think where a lot of people can get scared is just opening that door, because once you open that door, I mean, it's gonna go. You take that first step, and the dominoes start going,
Tell it.
and it's hard to stop it. It's rolling now, But the real change is when you just say, I'm just gonna take that first step, and no matter what that first step is, I don't know the plan, I don't know the way through it. I just know that this is the one thing I have to be true to, and then everything else just starts aligning. And I'd like to say, like, I'm making millions of dollars and doing everything I dream about, and that's not my reality right now. But you know what? I'm okay with where I'm at. I'm happy.
It's good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I got a good relationship with my family. I'm happy. I sleep good. I'm good.
I think that that's a powerful position to be in, Gabe.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about where you're at. I'm excited about where you're going. Obviously, the message that you shared is a powerful one. I want to thank you for sharing it with the Lionheart Institute. But if there was really anything that you left our particular audience with, what nugget, what golden nugget would you leave them with that they could really hold on to and say, you know what, that's the most powerful, most meaningful thing that he perceives about his life that I could apply in my life?
Yeah, I would say, if you're struggling, you're in a mental prison, you realize that your life is built on that one little piece, that Jenga piece, and you're afraid it's going to crumble, just take that first step. You may not know what the outcome is, but really trust and faith is what gets us through. And so take that first step, because life is long, it's beautiful, and it's short at the same time. But I'm 34, and my life will continue to build. I'll continue to go, but I'll have a solid foundation. So take that first step. It's scary, but do it.
That's so good. I mean, such great advice. And, to our viewers out there as well, take Gabe's story. It's so powerful. It can be applied to really anybody who's struggling in life. And, at the end of the day, the only thing that I would have to add and say is self-care is so incredibly important in every aspect of your life. So please self-care and find your truth and just live it.
Yeah.
So awesome.
100.
Hey, Gabe, we want to thank you for being on the show today, man. You've been one of the most powerful guests that we've had on.
For sure.
I think that our audience will really hold dear to the things that you communicated, that you spoke to, the truth you really addressed. So thank you for coming on today, my friend.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you both deeply. You guys have encouraged me and built me up, so thank you.
Thank you. Everybody, I want to thank you for being a part of the Lionheart Institute podcast. We do these interview series because we want to edify our community. We want to build you up with some valuable tools and valuable people that can speak into your life that'll bring change and bring meaningful impact and really give you the tools that you need to express in your life and to reach your full potential, overcome the obstacles that are facing you. And if you're similar to Gabe and you're facing some issues of depression, be courageous in this moment and realize you're not alone. There are a tremendous amount of mighty men and mighty women who have faced depression, faced anxiety, faced the very thing that you're facing right now. And so I just want to encourage you, even though you may have this gut feeling that pulling that Jenga card is going to make it all crumbling down, it's all right. Even if it falls down, you can build it back up. And the only way that you can really build the life that you want is by attacking the thing that's attacking you.
Absolutely. We just encourage you, if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel, smash the like button, be sure you click on that bell and get our notifications so you don't miss any of our episodes. The more of you that subscribe, the more opportunities we have to be able to continue to put amazing stories like Gabe's out there for you, to continue to encourage you and uplift you. So, please take the time and become one of our subscribers. We definitely appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. God bless you. I'm Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
And we'll see you on the top. The glorious Zig would say.